Hello, YouTube. This is RackAttack from RackAttackGamer's YouTube channel. And with me today, we have a guest that I often have spoken to on his channel. And he's so kindly decided to take it to my channel this time. Larry Sparano, nice to see you. Have you with us?
It's another Rack and Larry show, I guess, right?
Rack and Larry show, yeah. All right. So, Larry, what would you like to discuss today? I was thinking something along the lines of, I don't know, New World Order. I mean, that's what I always like to discuss.
That's a favorite topic of yours. What's new with the New World Order?
Well, I was thinking about getting into, like, the social engineering aspects of it, or, let's see, manufactured obsolescence, suppressed cures, and
coronavirus?
Pardon me?
Coronavirus, does that play into your scheme for a New World Order?
No, I'm not very up on the coronavirus, except that it's man-made. Would you like to discuss something about it?
We could.
Go for it.
Well, I mean, yeah, the indications are that it was a manufactured virus. There's some talk about being an intentional bioweapon that either escaped accidentally or on purpose, but, you know, there's all kinds of speculation now. However, it does raise the prospect of the power now of bio warfare, you know, just as bad as chemical warfare, even nuclear warfare to a certain extent, considering how a pandemic, a global pandemic, could wipe out millions of people, you know, the equivalent of a number of atomic bombs. So, yeah, it could be a huge threat in the future. And again, like during the Cold War, you know, we according to reports, we came close several times to going to war accidentally through miscommunication, whatever. So, you know, biological warfare could be set off accidentally or through miscommunication. So, you know, this is a big emerging threat.
Well, it's definitely a threat since it's already out and spreading. It's even worse of a threat if it is found out by, say, China, that U.S. released it on China, or even that if China accidentally released it on themselves, which I've heard both ways. If they are preparing to do biological warfare, which, you know, goes right along with my New World Order thing, because they want the infrastructure held in place. They just don't want the people. This goes to the Georgia Guidestones. Maintain the world under 500 million population. So getting rid of the people is one of their goals. And whether this be an accident, biological warfare, or even a weapon intentionally released, still it goes towards that goal of reducing the world population.
You know, along those lines about wiping out people rather than infrastructure, I believe they do have atomic weapons that are designed along those lines, where in a way they're passive. What they do is take out people with the radiation but leave buildings intact. So that's another permutation of that.
Well, let's put it this way. They do have multiple different kinds of weapons that could do the same type of thing. Leave all the infrastructure intact and just remove the people. Biological is one of the big ones, but I would even say that nanotechnology would be the biggest one of all. Nanotechnology could be programmed little tiny robots to do whatever your bidding is. They can target specific groups of people, just like biological, but you might even have a little bit more control because you can control mutations. When you have a biological weapon, you can't control mutations.
With all this emerging technology, with all the recent world events, political events, social disruption, do you see like the timetable for a takeover of what you say is a takeover of the New World Order accelerating? Are they closer now to that alleged goal that you talk about?
Well, I believe they're already involved in a takeover, especially of the United States. I think they've already pretty much conquered Europe. I think they got Asia under control. Africa doesn't seem to be a big of a problem for them. So as far as a takeover goes, the United States is their crown jewel, because the United States is the holdout. It's the one with the guns. It's the one with the people that like freedom. It's the one with the people that have a Bill of Rights. It's their toughest cookie to crumble.
You keep saying they. The big question, of course, is with skeptics like myself, who are they?
International bankers come to mind first. Also, big, extremely rich families. We're not talking, well, we're talking, say, Bill Gates rich and above Bill Gates rich. We're talking trillionaires, perhaps, instead of just billionaires. Although I'm sure some billionaires, and I can think of a few, are involved in the New World Order, or at least minions for it, whether they're in on it or just playing into it. Soros being one, Bloomberg being another. These two come to mind very, very instantaneously. Bloomberg with his desire to control guns, Soros with his desire to control everything else, and including guns.
Well, considering the type of mass destruction that this takeover it would entail, either biological infrastructure, whatever, massive population reduction, would they not be killing the goose that's laying the golden egg for them financially? If you wipe out these systems, then there are fewer profits for them to reap.
It's also fewer competition, and it takes away the threat of them being overrun, especially if they get the guns. No, they would like a smaller group of people, more easily controlled, more easily dominated, and more easily kept in control, especially if they remove guns from society, which they've done pretty much everywhere else, using what I believe is a cookie cutter method of getting rid of guns, which is this mass shooting somewhere, public outcry, and then let's remove the guns. Let's remove by decree, more or less.
But if they achieve their goal, what they would be doing is causing such a massive global destruction or disintegration that, what kind of a world is left for them to enjoy with a reduced population and with chaos around the globe?
I've heard so much so that I've heard this, that they don't even care about a nuclear war. An all-out nuclear war with radiation everywhere for hundreds and thousands of years, or maybe tens of thousands. Some radiation has half-lives up to tens of thousands of years or more. However, they believe that the Earth would clean itself up quite quickly, and that they would go to the southern hemisphere, that the nuclear war would be predominant in the northern hemisphere, and because of the wind patterns and jet streams and so forth, most of the radiation would be contained in the northern hemisphere and not really make it down very much at all to the southern hemisphere. This is their belief, that they will have their bunkers and whatever. They're certainly rich enough to build underground bunkers. They can live there for 10 years, maybe less, and then come out when they think everything's safe, and they'll be just fine. While, of course, everybody else is dead, dying, rotted, and everything else.
If you pardon the observation, this really seems like science fiction.
Well, I wish it was science fiction. And I'm sure that someone that has not looked into it for 17, 18 years like I have would see it that way. But when you look into it, and you look into it fervently for a long period of time, you just keep coming upon instance upon instance upon instance of proof, quote unquote, of the New World Order and their plans.
See, the big disagreement we have is that a lot of these trends may be underway, but is it really a reflection of an organized, monolithic effort to do this, or is it just the way the economy works, the way greed works, the way it's always worked, where the top dogs eat the bottom dogs,
that would be the stance, the view of someone, again, that I say has not looked into it very much. I often say in our discussions that the New World Order is, Pat Robertson wrote a book 20 years, 30 years ago. So I'm saying tens of years that the New World Order exists. But what I'm really doing is I'm basically making it a much younger thing, because actually, in reality, that's probably been around for thousands of years. And I think that people have for thousands of years been working towards this goal. And now the technology is of such nature that they can actually accomplish it.
I've also told you a number of times you have to consider the source. Pat Robertson, I don't consider.
Well, Pat Robertson isn't the only one. I mean, there is, 50, 100, 200 people, big time serious people that discussed New World Order and their takeover. Stanley Monteith, God rest his soul. Jim Marrs, God rest his soul. Alex Jones. There is people going back as far as FDR and beyond and further back. In Washington's writings, he discusses a takeover of the Freemasons or something like that. I think it's the Freemasons. Washington does discuss the Illuminati, and the Illuminati is considered one of the biggest elements of the New World Order.
So what happens when this takeover occurs? What happens to people like us?
Oh, you're meat. You're meat to them. What do they call it? Useless eaters. Useless eaters that just are in the way. They see themselves as a break-off civilization. They see themselves as the elite, as the worthy ones, perhaps even in some ways deities or from deities, and that everybody else is just cannon fodder.
Any possibility of us escaping this fate?
Yeah, one of the biggest things would be waking a bunch of people up. However, they are fighting against that with their censorship, YouTube censorship, Facebook censorship, Instagram, all the Twitter, all the nowadays, quote unquote, the town squares where people are able to communicate, get ideas across, and so forth. You go back just a few years ago, YouTube itself was much more open. People were spreading ideas all over the place about pretty much anything, talking about pretty much anything. That's all been stopped. All the mainstream media ideas are now pushed in the top of search engines of YouTube. This is done for a purpose. It's a purpose to get all the mainstream controlled ideas out to the public and to squash all the opposing ideas.
Where do you see Trump fitting into all this? Whether he's part of it?
Well, my hope is that Trump is not New World Order and that he got in because of a fluke, because he just happened to touch the right strings at the right time, and that Hillary Clinton was the tapped and chosen one to be in, and that they had their election system set up as in such a way that it would be an assured win for her. However, even with those type of manipulations of the election system, Trump got in because of his popularity. He just overwhelmed the system. And I think they were so cocky about it, and they were so assured that Hillary Clinton would get in, that when Trump actually overrode the system and got in, they've been going frantic ever since, which is why Russia, Ukraine, and everything else to try to get him out.
You think Trump is going to be reelected?
I think if nothing changes as of now, he'll be reelected. However, I'm sure they will work their butts off to censor, to manipulate, to election fraud, to do whatever they can to make sure that Trump doesn't get in.
If he's not reelected, what happens?
They will put in a New World Order minion, and they will continue with their takeover of the world. I would imagine that the first thing to go would be guns in the United States. You can see what's happening in Virginia and elsewhere around this nation where they are red flag laws, which I don't agree with Trump with, and I wish he would reverse on that because that's a nonsense thing. Without due process, taking people's guns, anybody can call anybody up for any reason and have their guns taken. He made a big mistake on that one, and I don't think Trump is the type to admit blunder and to correct his blunders. But that was a big mistake, the red flag laws. For Trump to be pro red flag laws, saying, let's take the guns first and then worry about due process later. That's not even in the Constitution. That's totally unconstitutional. And I wish Trump would stick to the Constitution a little bit more. Anyway, okay, so we touched on all this, and somehow you got into interviewing me. I guess that's just your nature. All right, so, well, it's been nice having a quick little discussion with you, Larry. Thanks for coming to my YouTube channel. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
It's always interesting discussing topics with RackAttack. So I'm looking forward to the next session, if we're still around.
Larry, why don't...
If an asteroid controlled by the New World Order doesn't wipe out the Northern Hemisphere, or some other nefarious design of theirs doesn't wipe us out, we'll be around for another session.
Right. Larry, before we go, why don't you tell people where you can be reached?
I can be found on YouTube and on my website, both under the name of On Target with Larry Sparano.
All right. Thank you very much for coming, Larry.
Thank you.
Bye.